There is a piece of land in Arizona that Kurt Russell has never sold, never forgotten, and never stopped talking about. It's not a luxury mansion. It's not a priceless Hollywood collectible. It's simply 1 acre of land overlooking the legendary Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone. To most people, it looks like an ordinary piece of property. But to Kurt Russell, it is the last physical reminder of a friendship that shaped one of the greatest Western films ever made. The man who gave him that land was Val Kilmer. And today, after Val's passing, the gift means something completely different. When journalists asked Kurt Russell to remember his longtime friend, he didn't deliver a carefully rehearsed Hollywood speech. He didn't call him perfect. He didn't pretend they always agreed. Instead, he shared stories about a brilliant actor, a stubborn perfectionist, and a man whose greatest battles happened far away from movie cameras. At 75 years old, Kurt Russell has spent more than 6 decades inside Hollywood. He's worked with legends, survived changing generations, and watched countless stars rise and fall. But when he speaks about Val Kilmer, there's something noticeably different in his voice. It's the voice of someone remembering a friend rather than a celebrity. And that's where this story begins. Long before they stood together in Tombstone, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer were traveling completely different paths toward Hollywood success. Kurt Russell was practically born into the entertainment industry. Born in Springfield, Massachusetts, in 1951, he grew up with a father who understood both professional sports and acting. Moving to California at a young age, Kurt found himself in front of cameras before most children had even decided what they wanted to be. By the age of 12, he was already starring in television westerns and quickly became one of Disney's most recognizable young actors. Audiences knew him as the friendly, reliable hero. Studios loved him because he was dependable. Families loved him because he was relatable. But behind that wholesome image was an actor who wanted far more challenging roles. He didn't want to spend his entire career playing the safe guy. He wanted characters with flaws, danger, and complexity. That opportunity finally arrived when director John Carpenter cast him as Elvis Presley. The performance surprised critics and audiences alike. Suddenly, Hollywood realized Kurt Russell wasn't just a former Disney star. He was a serious actor capable of carrying dramatic films. That single role completely changed the direction of his career. While Kurt was reinventing himself, another young performer was making his own remarkable journey. Val Kilmer wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing excellence. Born in Los Angeles in 1959, he developed a reputation for studying every role with incredible intensity. Friends describe him as thoughtful, intelligent, and endlessly curious. His talent earned him admission to the prestigious Juilliard School at an age when most aspiring actors were still trying to get noticed. For Val, acting wasn't simply entertainment. It was obsession. Every character became a puzzle to solve. Every performance demanded complete commitment. Instead of memorizing lines, he tried to understand how a person walked, spoke, thought, and even breathed. That dedication would eventually produce unforgettable performances, but it would also earn him a reputation for being demanding and difficult to work with. Ironically, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer didn't become friends while making a Western. They first crossed paths years earlier on the set of Silkwood. Val wasn't even part of the cast. He was visiting his girlfriend, singer and actress Cher, who was working on the film. Most people barely noticed the quiet young actor standing in the background. Kurt Russell did. Years later, he would remember seeing someone who didn't care about attention. Someone who simply wanted to become better at his craft. At the time, neither man could have imagined that a decade later they would stand side by side in a film that would become one of the greatest westerns ever made. Or that their friendship would outlive the movie itself. When production finally began on Tombstone in 1993, nobody expected the project to become a Hollywood classic. Behind the scenes, the film was struggling. Directors changed. Schedules collapsed. Studios grew nervous. But in the middle of that chaos, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer created something extraordinary, a friendship built on respect, humor, and a gift exchange that Hollywood is still talking about decades later. By 1993, Hollywood had almost given up on Western movies. Studios believed audiences wanted action blockbusters and big-budget thrillers, not stories about sheriffs, outlaws, and dusty frontier towns. Then came Tombstone. On paper, it looked like the perfect cast. Kurt Russell would play legendary lawman Wyatt Earp. Val Kilmer would portray the mysterious gambler and gunslinger Doc Holliday. Alongside them were Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, and several respected actors. Everything seemed perfect. But behind the cameras, the production was anything but smooth. Creative disagreements quickly appeared. Schedules became chaotic. The original director left the project early, leaving the entire film surrounded by uncertainty. Many people believed the movie would become another forgotten Western. Instead, something remarkable happened. The actors refused to let it fail. And no one fought harder than Kurt Russell. Although he never officially received directing credit, many people involved with the production have said Kurt Russell became one of the driving forces behind the film. He spent long nights reviewing scenes, discussing dialogue, and helping shape the story. During the day, he still had to perform as Wyatt, Earp, a fearless lawman carrying the weight of an entire town on his shoulders. Most actors would have focused only on their own performance. Kurt was focused on making the entire movie better. His commitment earned enormous respect from everyone on set, including Val Kilmer. While Kurt was leading the production, Val Kilmer quietly created what many critics now consider the greatest performance of his career. Doc Holliday wasn't written as the main character, but every time Val appeared on screen, audiences forgot to look anywhere else. He didn't play Holliday as a fearless gunfighter. He played him as a man living with the certainty of death. Suffering from tuberculosis, Doc knew every day could be his last. Yet instead of fear, Val gave him charm. Instead of anger, he gave him humor. Instead of weakness, he gave him elegance. With a whiskey glass in one hand and a sarcastic smile on his face, Doc Holliday became unforgettable. Then came the line that would live forever. "I'm your Huckleberry." 4 simple words, delivered with complete confidence. Within seconds, one of the most iconic moments in Western film history was born. Even today, decades later, fans continue quoting that scene. Not because of the script, but because of the way Val Kilmer brought it to life. Despite having completely different personalities, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer understood each other. Kurt approached acting with discipline and experience. Val approached it with obsession and perfectionism. Neither man cared about celebrity. They cared about getting every scene exactly right. Crew members often remembered long conversations between the two actors about character motivation, historical accuracy, and small details that most audiences would never even notice. There was competition. But it wasn't ego. It was mutual respect pushing both actors to become even better. And that respect became the foundation of a genuine friendship. When filming finally wrapped, both men decided to exchange gifts. Not expensive watches. Not luxury cars. Not Hollywood souvenirs. Something far more meaningful. Kurt Russell surprised Val with a burial plot inside the historic Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone. It was a playful reference to Doc Holliday, a man who spent the movie living side by side with death. Everyone laughed. It perfectly matched Val's dark sense of humor. But Val had prepared something even more unexpected. Instead of returning the joke, he bought Kurt Russell an entire acre of land overlooking the same famous cemetery. The symbolism couldn't have been more perfect. Doc Holliday was always connected to death. Wyatt Earp represented survival, justice, and life. Years later, Kurt would smile while remembering that exchange, saying it captured their characters and perhaps their personalities better than words ever could. And unlike many Hollywood friendships that disappear after filming ends, theirs remained real. They stayed in touch. They respected each other's work. And whenever they spoke publicly, there was genuine admiration rather than manufactured publicity. As the years passed, both actors continued their careers in very different ways. Kurt Russell became one of Hollywood's most dependable leading men, starring in action films, dramas, and family favorites. Val Kilmer, meanwhile, built a reputation as one of the industry's most gifted yet unpredictable performers. Some directors called him difficult. Others called him a genius. Many believed he was both. But no matter what stories appeared in magazines or interviews, Kurt Russell never reduced his friend to a headline. He understood something many people didn't. Behind the reputation was an artist who cared deeply about every role he accepted. And soon, life would test Val Kilmer in a way no movie ever could. A diagnosis would change everything. His voice, his career, and even the way he communicated with the world would never be the same again. By the mid-1990s, Val Kilmer had achieved what most actors spend an entire lifetime chasing. He had played Jim Morrison in The Doors, become Batman in one of the biggest superhero films of the decade, and delivered unforgettable performances in movies like Heat and Tombstone. Critics admired his talent. Audiences loved watching him. And directors knew that when Val Kilmer fully committed to a role, something extraordinary usually happened. But there was another side to his story. Val wasn't interested in becoming a typical Hollywood celebrity. He wasn't comfortable with carefully scripted interviews or maintaining a perfect public image. His focus was always the work itself. Some people admired that honesty. Others misunderstood it completely. Over the years, stories about him being difficult began spreading throughout Hollywood. Some producers describe him as demanding. Some directors called him stubborn. But actors who truly worked alongside him often described something different. A perfectionist. A man who refused to settle for average. Someone who believed every scene deserved everything he had. And Kurt Russell understood that better than most. In 2014, everything changed. Val Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer. At first, very few people knew. He kept the news private, choosing to face the battle away from cameras and headlines. Months turned into years. Treatments became more aggressive. Chemotherapy, radiation, multiple surgeries, and eventually, tracheotomy procedures that permanently affected the one instrument every actor depends on: his voice. For the man who had once captivated audiences as Jim Morrison and Doc Holliday, speaking suddenly became one of life's greatest challenges. Simple conversations required enormous effort. Words that once flowed naturally became whispers. Yet even then, Val refused to surrender. Instead of disappearing completely, he continued creating. He painted. He wrote. He stayed connected with fans. And most importantly, he never lost his sense of humor. In 2022, audiences witnessed something many believed would never happen. Val Kilmer returned as Tom "Iceman" Kazansky in Top Gun: Maverick. The reunion between Iceman and Maverick wasn't filled with explosions or action scenes. It was quiet, personal, emotional. For a few minutes, two old rivals simply sat together and talked. Behind the scenes, modern technology helped recreate Val's voice, allowing him to perform despite the damage caused by cancer. The scene instantly became one of the film's most powerful moments. Many viewers left theaters in tears. Without saying much, Val Kilmer reminded everyone why he had always been one of Hollywood's most respected performers. For many fans, it felt less like a movie scene and more like a farewell. Sadly, it would become exactly that. A few years before Val's passing, Kurt Russell visited his longtime friend. By then, illness had changed almost everything. The energetic actor who once dominated movie screens now struggled to communicate. Every sentence required patience. Every word required strength. But according to Kurt, something important had never changed: Val's spirit. The two friends spent time talking, remembering old stories, laughing about the past, and reflecting on lives that had taken very different paths. Then, during one quiet moment, Val looked at Kurt and smiled. After a pause, he admitted something that surprised him. He said, "Sometimes, I could have been a little nicer to people." And then he laughed. It wasn't regret filled with sadness. It was self-awareness. A man honestly looking back at his own life and accepting every success, every mistake, and every lesson. For Kurt Russell, that single moment revealed more about Val Kilmer than decades of interviews and headlines ever could. On April 1st, 2025, the entertainment world lost one of its most remarkable actors. Val Kilmer passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 65 after complications from pneumonia, following years of recovery from throat cancer. Tributes immediately arrived from every corner of Hollywood. Directors praised his dedication. Actors celebrated his brilliance. Fans revisited Top Gun, The Doors, Heat, and Tombstone, remembering the performances that had shaped an entire generation. But among all the public statements, Kurt Russell's words stood out. He didn't describe Val as perfect. He described him as human, talented, complicated, funny, brilliant, and deeply authentic. He reminded people that every person has what he called a full 360-degree strengths, flaws, victories, and regrets. And that's exactly what made Val Kilmer unforgettable. Today, Kurt Russell still owns that quiet acre of land overlooking Boot Hill Cemetery. To most people, it's just another piece of Arizona desert. But to him, it's a permanent reminder of a friendship built on respect, unforgettable performances, and one final conversation that he will carry for the rest of his life. Hollywood is full of friendships that exist only during movie promotions. Actors smile together on red carpets, praise each other in interviews, and then quietly move on to the next project. But Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer shared something different. They never needed constant public appearances to prove their friendship. There were no staged photos every few months, no carefully planned social media posts, no headlines designed to keep them relevant. Instead, there was mutual respect, the kind that grows naturally between two people who recognize the same passion in each other. Both men approached acting differently, but they shared one belief. Every role deserved complete commitment. Every performance deserved honesty. And perhaps that was why they understood each other so well. Over 30 years have passed since Tombstone was released. Millions of people still remember Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. But very few know the story that happened after the cameras stopped rolling. When filming ended, Kurt Russell jokingly gave Val Kilmer a burial plot inside the historic Boot Hill Cemetery. It perfectly matched Doc Holliday, a man who spent his life standing only a few steps away from death.
Val Loghead.
But his response revealed something about his personality that many people never saw. Instead of matching the joke with another joke, he bought Kurt Russell an entire acre of land overlooking the cemetery. Not inside it. Above it. Years later, Kurt reflected on the exchange and smiled. Doc Holliday was always connected to death. Wyatt Earp represented survival. One rests in the cemetery. The other watches over it. Without planning it, the two gifts captured the spirit of their characters, and perhaps the spirit of their friendship. Today, that piece of land has become something much more valuable than real estate. It has become a memory. A reminder of conversations, long filming days, shared laughter, and one extraordinary actor who is no longer here. After Val Kilmer's passing, many celebrities released polished statements filled with familiar words. Legend. Icon. One of the greatest. Kurt Russell chose a different path. Instead of creating another perfect Hollywood tribute, he spoke about the real Val Kilmer. He admitted that Val could be stubborn, that he could challenge people, that he sometimes made life difficult for those around him. But he also spoke about his kindness, his intelligence, his incredible humor, and his complete dedication to acting. Kurt summed it up with a simple idea. Every person has a full 360 degrees. There are sides the public sees, and there are sides only friends ever know. Judging someone by a single headline or a single story never tells the whole truth. Perhaps that was Kurt's greatest lesson. Not just about Val Kilmer, but about life itself. Years from now, new audiences will continue discovering Val Kilmer through his films. Some will meet him as the confident Iceman in Top Gun. Others will experience the unforgettable intensity of Jim Morrison in The Doors. Many will discover the cool brilliance of Doc Holliday in Tombstone. And every generation will ask the same question. How could one actor disappear so completely into every character he played? The answer may never be fully explained. Because Val wasn't interested in becoming famous. He wanted to become believable. He chased authenticity instead of perfection. And that's exactly why his performances continue to feel timeless. Perhaps the most touching part of Kurt Russell's story isn't the movies. It isn't the awards. It isn't even the famous gift exchange. It's one quiet moment between two old friends. A man weakened by illness looks at someone who has known him for decades. He smiles. He admits that maybe he could have been a little nicer to people. Then he laughs.
No bitterness.
No self-pity. Just honesty. In that single sentence, Val Kilmer accepted every success, every mistake, every misunderstanding, and every chapter of his life. And Kurt Russell understood exactly what his friend meant. Sometimes the greatest performances don't happen on a movie set. Sometimes they happen in ordinary moments that no camera ever records. There is still an acre of Arizona land overlooking Boot Hill Cemetery. The desert winds still move across the same hills where history once unfolded. Tourists pass by without realizing that somewhere nearby sits a gift exchanged between two actors who created one of the greatest westerns ever filmed. One gift represented death. The other represented life. And somehow, decades later, both became symbols of friendship. Val Kilmer's voice may have faded. His final curtain may have fallen. But his characters continue to speak for him. Every time Doc Holliday calmly says, "I'm your Huckleberry." Every time Iceman shares one last conversation with Maverick. Every time Jim Morrison steps onto a stage. A part of Val Kilmer is still there. And perhaps that's why Kurt Russell never talks about him as if he has completely gone away. Because great artists leave behind something stronger than memory. They leave behind moments that continue living long after they are gone. And for millions of movie lovers around the world, Val Kilmer will always be remembered not only as one of Hollywood's finest actors, but as the unforgettable friend who gave Wyatt Earp one final view over Boot Hill. If this story brought back memories of watching Top Gun, Tombstone, Heat, or The Doors, let us know in the comments. Which Val Kilmer performance will you never forget? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more in-depth Hollywood documentaries and untold celebrity stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.